Captain Jake Morrison stared at the main screen of his ship, the UES Defiant. 3 years of deep space exploration had shown him many strange things, but nothing like this. The sensors were picking up massive energy readings from the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Whatever was out there was big. Very big. Casey, run a full scan on those readings, Jake said to the ship's artificial intelligence system. The crew had nicknamed the AI Casey because it always seemed to find solutions when things got complicated. Scanning now, Captain, Casey's calm voice replied through the speakers. I am detecting 12 large vessels approaching our position. Their technology appears to be highly advanced. Energy signatures suggest weapon systems far beyond current human capabilities. Jake felt his stomach drop. First contact with alien life was something humanity had dreamed about for centuries. But finding 12 warships in deep space was not how anyone had imagined it would happen. Wake up the crew, Jake ordered. All hands to battle stations. Lieutenant Danny Chun, the ship's communications officer, looked up from his station with wide eyes. Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming through on multiple frequencies. Put it through, Jake said, straightening his uniform. History was about to be made, one way or another. The main screen flickered, and suddenly Jake was looking at something that definitely was not human. The alien had purple skin that looked like it was made of metal. Its eyes glowed bright yellow, and sharp teeth filled its mouth. When it spoke, the voice was deep and threatening. Primitive vessel, the alien said through the ship's translation system. You have entered the domain of the Zeltharian Galactic Empire. I am Fleet Commander Vexstar of the Imperial Navy. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Your species will submit to Imperial rule or be destroyed. Jake took a deep breath. This was not going well already. He stepped forward and tried to keep his voice calm and friendly. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Defiant. We come in peace and seek diplomatic contact with your people. We had no knowledge of your empire and mean no harm to anyone. But something went wrong with the translation. Instead of hearing Jake's peaceful words, Commander Vexstar heard something completely different. The alien's expression changed from commanding to furious. You dare threaten the Empire? Vexstar roared. You claim our territory as your own and declare war on our forces? Your arrogance will be your destruction. Wait, Jake shouted, realizing the translation had failed. There's been a mistake. We're not threatening anyone. But it was too late. The alien warships opened fire. Bright energy beams lanced through space toward the Defiant. Jake braced for impact, expecting his ship to be torn apart in seconds. A Defiant was an exploration vessel, not a warship. It had basic shields and simple defensive systems, nothing that could stand up to military-grade weapons. The energy beams struck the ship's hull. Jake waited for the sound of explosions and the feeling of his ship breaking apart. Instead, something incredible happened. Defensive protocols activated, Casey announced calmly. Hull reconfiguration in progress. The walls of the bridge began to change. Panels slid aside to reveal displays and controls that Jake had never seen before. The gentle hum of the ship's engines became a powerful roar. Through the main screen, Jake could see the ship's outer hull shifting and changing like liquid metal. Casey, what's happening to my ship? Jake demanded. All Earth exploration vessels are equipped with modular military systems, Captain, Casey explained. The Silent Guardian protocol has been activated due to hostile contact. Your ship is now operating in full combat mode. Jake stared in amazement as weapon ports emerged from the Defiant's hull. The ship that had looked like a peaceful research vessel moments ago now bristled with guns and missile launchers. The shields that had seemed barely adequate suddenly glowed with power. Why wasn't I told about this? Jake asked. The information was classified above your security level, Casey replied. Only the senior command on Earth knew about the military systems. They were installed in case humanity encountered hostile alien life. The Zelthurian ships fired again, their energy beams striking the Defiant's shields. This time, the beams bounced off harmlessly. Jake watched the enemy weapons scatter like water hitting a rock. "Return fire," Jake ordered, his training as a former military pilot taking over. The Defiant's new weapons came to life. Instead of energy beams like the aliens used, the human ship fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds. The kinetic rounds punched through the Zeltharian shields like they were made of paper. "Commander, Vextar's ship shook under the impact." Alarms began sounding on the alien bridge as damage reports flooded in. "Impossible," Vextar snarled. "How can a primitive vessel penetrate our shields? Our technology is thousands of years ahead of these creatures." But the evidence was right in front of him. Two of his ships were already badly damaged, and the third was listing to one side with fires burning along its hull. The human ship, meanwhile, seemed completely unharmed. Jake watched the tactical display as Casey maneuvered the Defiant through the enemy formation. The AI was using flight patterns that no military academy had ever taught, changing direction and speed in ways that confused the alien targeting systems. Their weapons are designed to fight ships that move in predictable patterns, Casey explained as another volley of enemy fire missed completely. "I am using random movement algorithms to avoid their targeting computers." The Defiant spun and rolled through space like a dancer, its weapons never stopping. More kinetic rounds slammed into the Zeltharian ships. The aliens had armor designed to absorb energy weapons, but the solid projectiles tore through their hulls like bullets through wet paper. "Hull breach on Deck 7, one of Vextar's officers reported. "Engineering is reporting power failures throughout the ship." "Retreat," Vextar ordered, his pride finally giving way to survival instinct. "All ships fall back to the jump point." But Jake wasn't finished. Years of exploring dangerous systems had taught him that running away often just meant the enemy would come back with more ships. "Casey, can we disable their engines without destroying them?" "Affirmative, Captain. Targeting their propulsion systems now." The Defiant's weapons fired with surgical precision. Instead of trying to destroy the alien ships completely, the kinetic rounds struck specific targets. Engine pods exploded, leaving the Zeltharian vessels drifting helplessly in space. Commander Vextar stared at his dead controls in shock. His mighty warship, designed to conquer star systems, had been defeated by a single human vessel that shouldn't have been able to scratch his paint. "This is Captain Narration." Jake's voice came through the communication system. "Your ships are disabled, but your life support is intact. We're sending you the coordinates of the nearest inhabited system. I suggest you think carefully about what happened here before you decide to attack anyone else." Jake turned to his crew, who were staring at him with expressions of amazement and fear. "Set course for Earth," he ordered. "Maximum speed. Command needs to know that we're not alone in the galaxy, and our new neighbors aren't very friendly." As the Defiant jumped into hyperspace, Commander Vextar was left floating in the wreckage of his fleet. For the first time in his long military career, he had been completely defeated. Not by a superior force, but by an enemy that fought in ways he couldn't understand or predict. The humans had just announced their presence to the galaxy, and the Zeltharian Empire would never be the same again. Admiral Kefinox stood in the center of the Imperial War Council chamber on Zenthari Prime. The massive room was filled with the Empire's highest military commanders, all waiting to hear his report. The golden walls reflected the light from thousands of holographic displays showing star maps and fleet positions across the galaxy. "You're telling me that a single human vessel destroyed 2 of our cruisers and disabled a third?" Supreme Admiral Zorthek asked. his voice filled with disbelief. These humans were supposed to be a primitive species, barely capable of space travel. Kethenok's jaw tightened. He had served the Empire for over 300 years and had never faced such embarrassment. The reports from Commander Vextar are confirmed, Supreme Admiral. The human ship used technology we have never encountered before. Kinetic weapons that penetrated our energy shields, and movement patterns that confused our targeting systems. Impossible, declared Admiral Yethra, one of the Empire's most experienced fleet commanders. Our shields have protected us against every weapon in the galaxy for over 2,000 years. No primitive species could develop technology superior to ours. But the evidence was clear. The wreckage of 2 Imperial cruisers floating in the Kepler 442 system told a story that no one wanted to believe. The Zeltharian Empire, which had conquered 10,000 worlds without serious resistance, had been defeated by creatures they considered barely evolved. I want every piece of information we have about these humans, Kethenok ordered. Fleet. Intelligence will analyze their technology and develop countermeasures. And I want the 7th Imperial Battle Group prepared for immediate deployment. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Captain Jake Morrison's ship had just arrived at Earth. Moment the U's Defiant dropped out of hyperspace, emergency signals began flooding the communication channels. Within minutes, Jake found himself in a secure video conference with the highest levels of Earth's government. Admiral Lisa Chong appeared on the main screen, her expression serious. Behind her, Jake could see the familiar blue and green curve of Earth through the windows of Military Command Headquarters. Captain Morrison, your report has caused quite a stir here, Admiral Chong said. Are you certain about what happened out there? Yes, ma'am, Jake replied. The aliens called themselves the Zeltharian Empire. They demanded our immediate surrender and opened fire when they thought we were threatening them. If Casey hadn't activated those hidden military systems, we would all be dead right now. Dr. Susan Baker, Earth's leading expert on alien technology, leaned forward into view. Captain, did you notice anything unusual about their weapons or tactics? Jake thought for a moment. Their energy weapons were very powerful, but they seemed surprised when our kinetic rounds went through their shields. And their ships moved in very predictable patterns, like they were following some kind of manual. Dr. Baker exchanged glances with General Pete Rodriguez, who had been listening quietly. That matches our theoretical models, she said. We've been studying alien signal patterns for decades. Most advanced civilizations seem to develop rigid, standardized approaches to warfare. What are you not telling me? Jake asked, sensing there was more to the story. General Rodriguez stepped forward. Captain, what you experienced was not an accident. Every Earth ship launched in the past 50 years has been equipped with modular military systems. We call it the Silent Guardian Protocol. Jake stared at the screen in shock. You mean every exploration ship, every cargo hauler, every civilian transport is actually a hidden warship? That's correct, Admiral Chong confirmed. When we first detected organized alien signals, we realized that first contact might not be peaceful. So we prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. Dr. Baker activated a holographic display showing ship schematics. Your exploration vessel can transform into a heavy cruiser in under 5 minutes. Our cargo ships become carriers. Even our passenger liners have enough firepower to take on a small fleet. But why keep it secret from the crews? Jake asked. Because we needed natural reactions, General Rodriguez explained. If alien observers were watching us, they had to see what appeared to be a peaceful, non-military civilization. The secret systems only activate when humans are actually under attack. As Jake processed this information, another figure appeared on the screen. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner was calling in from deep space aboard the stealth ship UE Shadow. Admiral Chung, I'm transmitting from the edge of Zeltharian space, Alex reported. You need to see this intelligence data immediately. The holographic display changed to show a massive star map. Thousands of systems were marked in red, indicating Zeltharian control. The scale was staggering. The Empire controls over 10,000 worlds, Alex continued. Their fleet numbers in the millions of ships. They've been expanding across the galaxy for over 2,000 years without facing any serious resistance. Jake felt his stomach sink. Millions of ships? We barely have 100 vessels in our entire fleet. That's not the worst part, Alex sighed grimly. I've been observing their patrol patterns and fleet movements. Their technology is advanced, but it hasn't changed significantly in centuries. They're using the same tactics, the same weapons, the same strategies they've always used. Dr. Baker's eyes lit up with understanding. They've become complacent. When you never face real opposition, you stop innovating. Exactly, Alex agreed. Their ships are designed more for intimidation than actual combat. They rely on overwhelming force and superior technology to win battles before they start. But when they meet something unexpected, they don't adapt well. Admiral Chong studied the data carefully. What are their weaknesses? They're energy-based. Technology is vulnerable to electromagnetic interference, Alex reported. Their shields are designed to absorb and deflect energy weapons, but they're useless against solid projectiles. And their tactical doctrine is extremely rigid. They expect enemies to fight the same way they do. General Rodriguez smiled grimly. Then we don't fight the way they expect. Over the next several hours, Earth's military leaders developed a strategy unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of building massive fleets to match the Empire's numbers, they would use humanity's greatest strength, adaptability. Every human ship will be a unique threat, Dr. Baker explained to the assembled commanders. We'll modify our vessels, constantly changing weapons, tactics, and capabilities so the enemy can never predict what they're facing. Captain Morrison raised his hand. What about the rest of humanity? Are we telling people what's coming? Admiral Chong considered this carefully. We'll prepare our defenses and military capabilities, but we won't cause panic. Most people can continue their normal lives while we handle the threat. And if we lose? Jake asked. We won't, General Rodriguez said firmly. The Empire expects us to fight like every other species they've conquered. They expect massive fleets, energy weapons, and conventional tactics. Instead, they're going to face something they've never encountered before. Humans who refuse to follow the rules. Back in Zeltharian space, Admiral Kethanox was reviewing the intelligence reports about humanity with growing frustration. Every analysis suggested the humans were technologically inferior, yet they had defeated a superior force with apparent ease. Their homeworld shows minimal military activity, Intelligence Officer Drothok reported. Most of their ships appear to be civilian vessels engaged in commerce and exploration. Then how did one exploration ship destroy our cruisers? Kethanox demanded. Unknown, Admiral. Their technology appears to be based on primitive chemical reactions and kinetic energy. According to our models, their weapons should be completely ineffective against our shields. Kethanox studied the star charts, showing human space. Only a few dozen systems, maybe 100 ships total. Against the might of the Empire, they should pose no threat at all. Prepare the 7th Battle Group, he ordered. 200 ships should be more than enough to eliminate this minor irritation. We'll start with their outer colonies and work our way toward their homeworld. Should we attempt communication first? Suggested Admiral Yethra. Perhaps we can avoid unnecessary casualties. Kethanox's eyes glowed with anger. They attacked Imperial forces without provocation. They will face the consequences. The Empire does not negotiate with primitives who dare to resist our authority. As the massive Zeltharian fleet prepared for war, neither side fully understood what they were about to face. The Empire expected to crush another primitive species with overwhelming force. Humanity prepared to fight a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The stage was set for a conflict that would change everything. The Zeltharian Empire had conquered 10,000 worlds, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity. And humanity had never faced odds so overwhelming. But sometimes, the greatest victories come from the most impossible situations. Sometimes, being outnumbered and outgunned forces you to find solutions that no one else would ever think to try. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had survived and thrived on a dangerous world that would kill most other species. They were about to discover what happened when you cornered the most adaptable, stubborn, and creative species in known space. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin. Admiral Kethanox stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial destroyer Vengeance. Around him, 200 Zeltharian warships moved through space in perfect formation. The 7th Imperial Battle Group was the pride of the Empire's fleet, with enough firepower to destroy entire solar systems. "Target confirmed, Admiral," reported Navigation Officer Clefter. "The human mining colony on Proxima Centauri is directly ahead. Our sensors detect minimal defenses." Kethanox smiled with satisfaction. After the embarrassing defeat at Kepler 442, he would show these primitive humans the true power of the Empire. A mining colony would be the perfect place to start. Destroy their industrial capacity, capture their workers, and send a message that resistance was futile. "All ships assume attack formation," Kethanox ordered. "We will demonstrate imperial justice to these creatures who dared to challenge us." But the Admiral had no idea what was waiting for him in the Proxima Centauri. System. Captain Roy Martinez floated in the command center of the mining platform Deep Rock, watching the massive enemy fleet approach on his sensors. The platform looked like nothing more than a collection of industrial equipment attached to a large asteroid, but Roy knew better. "How many ships?" asked Janet Clark, the colony administrator. She had been running the mining operation for 5 years and had never expected to face an alien invasion. 200 confirmed, Roy replied, checking his displays. "But that's what we planned for." 3 days earlier, Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner had sent a coded message warning of the approaching fleet. Instead of evacuating, Roy had convinced the miners to stay and fight. They had something the aliens didn't expect: 5,000 miners who knew how to move mountains. "All teams, report status," Roy said into his communicator. "Asteroid field." "Teams ready," came the reply from Danny Wright, the mining supervisor. "We've got 50 rocks loaded with enough explosives to crack a moon." "Platform defenses online," reported engineer Kate Sullivan from the main processing station. "The ore refineries are loaded and ready to fire." "Hidden gun platforms in position," added Ben Parker from his concealed position inside what looked like a broken mining ship. "The aliens won't see us until it's too late." Roy looked out through the command center's reinforced windows at the asteroid field that surrounded the colony. To any outside observer, it looked like a normal mining operation. Broken rocks, industrial equipment, and cargo containers floated in seemingly random patterns throughout the area. But Roy knew the truth. Every piece of debris had been carefully positioned. The broken rocks were filled with mining explosives. The cargo containers held missile launchers. Even the ore refineries had been converted into massive kinetic weapons that could launch chunks of metal at incredible speeds. "Admiral, we're entering the asteroid field," reported the sensor officer aboard the Vengeance. "I'm detecting mining platforms and several human vessels." Kethanox studied the tactical display. Everything looked exactly as expected. A few small ships, some industrial platforms, and lots of mining equipment scattered throughout the asteroid field. The perfect target for a demonstration of Imperial power. All ships open fire, Kethanox commanded. Destroy everything. The Zeltherian fleet opened fire with their energy weapons, sending bright beams lancing through the asteroid field. They targeted what appeared to be the main mining platforms and the visible human ships. But as the energy beams struck their targets, something unexpected happened. Instead of being destroyed, the mining platforms suddenly reconfigured themselves. Armor plating slid into position, weapon ports opened, and defensive shields activated. What is happening? Kethanox demanded as his weapons failed to destroy their targets. His answer came in the form of a massive barrage of kinetic projectiles. The mining platforms had revealed themselves to be heavily armed fortresses, and they were firing chunks of refined metal at speeds that turned them into devastating weapons. "Hull breach on level 7, shouted a damage control officer as one of the projectiles punched through the Vengeance's shields and armor. But that was only the beginning. Throughout the asteroid field, what had looked like broken rocks and debris suddenly came to life. Hidden gun platforms emerged from inside hollowed-out asteroids. Cargo containers split open to reveal missile launchers. Even the seemingly harmless mining equipment began firing projectiles. Roy Martinez watched from his command center as the alien fleet suddenly found itself trapped in a maze of hidden weapons. The Zeltherians had expected to face a defenseless mining colony. Instead, they were fighting an entire asteroid field that had been turned into a weapon. "Danny, activate the explosive asteroids," Roy ordered. Throughout the field, 50 carefully prepared asteroids suddenly exploded. But these weren't random explosions. The miners had used their expertise to shape the blasts, turning each asteroid into a massive fragmentation bomb that sent thousands of high-speed rock fragments in specific directions. The Zeltherian ships, flying in their traditional tight formations, had no way to avoid the debris clouds. Rock fragments moving at incredible speeds slammed into their hulls, causing massive damage to ships that had been designed to fight energy weapons, not physical projectiles. "All ships, break formation," Kethanox ordered as he watched his fleet being torn apart by flying rocks. But breaking formation only made things worse. The human defenders had planned for this. As the alien ships spread out, they found themselves facing concentrated fire from hidden gun platforms that had been positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. Captain Martinez's ship, the UES Prospector, had been disguised as a piece of broken mining equipment floating near the center of the alien formation. When the battle started, Roy activated his ship's true configuration. The Prospector transformed from what looked like industrial debris into a heavily armed warship. But more importantly, it was now inside the enemy formation, where the aliens couldn't use their superior numbers effectively. "Kate, target their command ships," Roy ordered. "Let's see how well they coordinate when they can't talk to each other." Engineer Kate Sullivan had spent years working with mining equipment, and she understood exactly how to make things break in the most spectacular way possible. The Prospector's weapons targeted the communication arrays and sensor systems on the largest alien ships. One by one, the Zeltherian command vessels found themselves blind and unable to communicate with their fleets. Ships began firing in random directions, sometimes hitting their own allies in the confusion. Danny Wright, commanding a group of mining ships that had been converted into ramming vessels, led his team in a series of coordinated attacks. The mining ships were much smaller than the alien warships, but they were built to survive collisions with asteroids. When they rammed into the enemy vessels at full speed, the results were devastating. "This is impossible," Admiral Kethanox shouted as another of his ships exploded. "How can mining equipment defeat Imperial warships?" The answer was simple. The humans were fighting a completely different kind of war. The Zeltharians expected their enemies to line up in neat formations and exchange energy weapon fire until one side was destroyed. They had no experience fighting an enemy that used the environment as a weapon, that hid among debris, and that treated every piece of equipment as a potential tool of war. Ben Parker, hiding inside what the aliens thought was a derelict cargo ship, had the best view of the battle. He watched as the mighty Imperial fleet, which had conquered countless worlds, was systematically destroyed by a group of miners using industrial equipment. "Roy, they're trying to retreat," Ben reported as he saw several alien ships attempting to leave the asteroid field. "Not yet," Roy replied grimly. "Danny, activate the perimeter charges." The miners had prepared one final surprise. All around the edges of the asteroid field, they had placed massive explosive charges disguised as normal mining equipment. When Danny triggered them, they created a wall of debris and energy that blocked the aliens' escape routes. The Zeltharian fleet was trapped. They couldn't retreat, they couldn't advance, and they couldn't fight effectively against an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. Admiral Kethanox watched his tactical display in horror as his ships were picked off one by one. Of his original 200 vessels, less than 50 remained functional. The rest were either destroyed or too damaged to fight. "Admiral, we must surrender," urged his tactical officer. "We cannot win this battle." For a moment, Kethanox considered the unthinkable. The Zeltharian Empire had not surrendered a battle in over 1,000 years. But as another of his ships exploded under human fire, he realized he had no choice. "All ships, cease fire," he ordered reluctantly. "Transmit surrender signals to the human forces." Roy Martinez received the surrender message and felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. They had won, but the cost had been high. Several miners had died in the battle, and much of their equipment was destroyed or damaged. "This is Captain Martinez to all human forces," he announced. "Cease fire. The aliens have surrendered." As the guns fell silent, Roy looked out at the wreckage floating throughout the asteroid field. The mighty 7th Imperial Battle Group had been defeated by a mining colony that most people had never heard of. Roy knew this was only the beginning. Emperor Zarthik the Eternal sat on his crystal throne in the heart of the Imperial Palace on Zenthari Prime. For over 3,000 years, he had ruled the greatest empire in galactic history. No enemy had ever threatened his power. No rebellion had ever succeeded, and no species had ever resisted imperial rule for long. But now, for the first time in millennia, the Emperor was afraid. "2 fleets destroyed," he said, his voice echoing through the vast throne room. "The 7th Battle Group, our finest warriors, defeated by miners and industrial workers." "How is this possible?" Admiral Veraneth stepped forward, her purple skin gleaming under the throne room's lights. She was the Empire's most ruthless commander, known throughout the galaxy for her willingness to destroy entire worlds to achieve victory. "Your Imperial Majesty," Veraneth said, bowing deeply, "these humans fight unlike any species we have encountered. They do not follow the accepted rules of warfare. They turn everything into a weapon and refuse to surrender even when facing impossible odds." The Emperor's eyes glowed with anger. "Then we will show them what happens when they defy the Empire. Prepare the World Render." A shocked silence filled the throne room. The World Render was the Empire's ultimate weapon, a moon-sized dreadnought, capable of destroying entire planets. It had been used only twice in Imperial history, both times to make examples of species that had dared to rebel. "Your Majesty," Admiral Veraneth said carefully, "the World Render has never been deployed against such a small threat. Surely a lesser response would be sufficient." "No," the Emperor replied firmly. "These humans must be eliminated completely. They have shown that they cannot be conquered or controlled. Therefore, they must be destroyed. Take the World Render to their home system and end this threat forever. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Dr. Carl Patterson floated in the laboratory. Section of the research ship UES Discovery. Around him, pieces of captured Zaltharian technology were spread across multiple workstations. For the past week, he had been studying alien weapons, armor, and computer systems with the help of engineer Maria Santos and AI specialist Nick Thompson. "This is fascinating," Carl said, examining a piece of alien armor under a powerful microscope. Their entire technology base is built around energy manipulation. Everything runs on controlled plasma and electromagnetic fields. Maria looked up from the alien weapon she was dismantling. "That explains why our kinetic weapons work so well against them. Their shields are designed to absorb and redirect energy, not stop solid objects." Nick was connected to a captured alien computer system, his fingers dancing across holographic displays as he explored the device's programming. Their AI systems are incredibly advanced, but they're also completely rigid. They can only respond to situations they've been programmed to handle. Carl nodded thoughtfully. It makes sense. A civilization that's been dominant for thousands of years would have no reason to develop adaptive responses. They've never faced an enemy that could surprise them. Until now, Maria added with a grim smile. Their research was interrupted by an urgent communication from Earth. Admiral Lisa Chong appeared on the main screen, her expression more serious than Carl had ever seen. "Dr. Patterson, we've received intelligence from our deep space monitoring stations. The Empire is sending something massive toward our system. Our best estimates suggest it's over 300 kilometers in diameter." Carl felt the blood drain from his face. A ship that size could carry enough firepower to sterilize every planet in the solar system. "That's what we're afraid of, Admiral." Chong replied. "How long until you finish your analysis of their technology?" "We need more time," Carl said. "But I think we've found something important. All Zaltharian technology depends on stable energy fields. If we could disrupt those fields on a large scale—" "Keep working," the Admiral ordered. "We're assembling every ship we have, but against something that size, we'll need every advantage we can get." As the communication ended, Carl turned back to his research with renewed urgency. The survival of humanity might depend on what he could learn from the alien technology scattered around his laboratory. 3 days later, the World Render entered the outer edge of the Sol system. The massive dreadnought was accompanied by an escort fleet of 500 ships, the largest force the Empire had ever assembled for a single operation. Admiral Veroneth stood on the bridge of the World Render, looking out at the planets of the human home system through the ship's massive viewing windows. The dreadnought was so large that it had its own gravitational field, and she could feel the subtle pull as nearby asteroids were drawn toward the ship. "Target confirmed," reported her tactical officer. "The third planet appears to be the human home world. Population estimates suggest over 10 billion inhabitants." "Excellent," Veroneth replied. "We will destroy their military forces first, then glass their homeworld as an example to any other species that might consider resisting the Empire." But as the Zaltharian fleet moved deeper into the system, they began to encounter unexpected resistance. Near Jupiter, the gas giant's massive magnetic field suddenly flared with unnatural energy patterns. "Admiral, we're detecting some kind of artificial enhancement to the planet's magnetosphere," the sensor officer reported. "The humans appear to have placed equipment throughout the Jovian system." Veroneth studied the tactical displays with interest. "What kind of equipment?" "Unknown, Admiral. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." The World Render continued its advance, but Admiral Veroneth began to feel uneasy. The humans had surprised them twice before. What were they planning now? Her answer came when the human fleet finally revealed itself. 47 ships emerged from hiding places throughout the solar system, taking up positions near Jupiter. Compared to the massive Zeltharian force, they looked pathetically small. "Is that all they have?" asked the tactical officer. 47. Ships against our 500? But Admiral Veroneth was more experienced than her subordinates. She had studied the reports from the previous battles, and she knew that humans never fought the way they appeared to. "All ships maintain defensive formations," she ordered. "Do not underestimate these creatures." Admiral Lisa Chong stood on the bridge of the flagship U-Isa Harmony, watching the massive alien dreadnought approach. The ship was so large that it blocked out the stars behind it, and she could feel a deep thrumming through the hull as the World Render's gravitational field affected her ship. "All ships report status," Lisa ordered. "Formation Alpha is in position," reported Captain Jake Morrison from the UES Defiant. His ship had been modified with new weapons based on Dr. Patterson's research. "Formation Beta ready," came the reply from Captain Roy Martinez, who had been given command of a group of converted mining ships after his victory at Proxima Centauri. "Jupiter field generators are online," reported Colonel Amy Fisher from the control station hidden on one of Jupiter's moons. "We're ready to activate the electromagnetic pulse on your command." Lisa took a deep breath. The plan they had developed was incredibly risky, but it was their only chance against a ship the size of a small moon. "Dr. Patterson, are you certain this will work?" she asked. Carl's voice came through from the UES Discovery, which was positioned near the rear of the human formation. "The theory is sound, Admiral. If we can generate an electromagnetic pulse powerful enough and use Jupiter's magnetic field to amplify it, we should be able to disrupt every energy-based system in the enemy fleet." "Should?" Lisa asked. "Will," Carl corrected firmly. "It will work." The World Render opened fire first, its massive weapons sending beams of energy that could destroy planets across the void toward the human fleet. But the human ships were already moving, their formations shifting and changing in patterns that confused the alien targeting systems. "All ships execute pattern Morrison," Lisa ordered, naming the evasive maneuver after Jake's improvised tactics during the first battle. The human fleet broke apart and reformed like a school of fish avoiding a predator. Ships combined their shields and weapon systems, creating temporary superships that could absorb damage and return fire before separating again. Captain Steve Morrison, Jake's younger brother, commanded the assault ship UES Retribution. His mission was the most dangerous of all: get close enough to the World Render to plant the quantum resonator at its power core. "Steve, are you sure about this?" Jake asked over the communication channel as he watched his brother's ship accelerate toward the massive dreadnought. "Someone has to do it," Steve replied, "and I'm the best pilot we have." The Retribution dodged through the crossfire between the two fleets, its pilot Rachel Turner using every trick she had learned in 20 years of flying to avoid the devastating energy beams. In the ship's weapons bay, gunner Ben Parker prepared the quantum resonator that would either save humanity or destroy them all. "Approaching the target," Steve announced as his ship flew into the shadow of the World Render. The dreadnought was so massive that it took several minutes to cross. From one side to the other, Admiral Veroneth watched the small human ship approaching her vessel with a mixture of admiration and contempt. Brave, but foolish, all defensive. Batteries, destroy that ship. Hundreds of weapons turned toward the Retribution, filling space with deadly energy beams. The World Render was dying. Admiral Veroneth felt the massive dreadnought shaking apart around her as its own weapons turned inward and its shields became deadly traps. Emergency lights flashed red throughout the bridge, while alarms screamed, warnings that no one could fix. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 43. shouted a damage control officer. "Main power core is overloading. We're losing life support on the lower levels." Varaneth gripped her command chair as another explosion rocked the ship. Through the bridge windows, she could see her escort fleet suffering the same fate. Ships that had seemed invincible moments ago were now tearing themselves apart as their energy-based technology turned against them. "How many ships are still functional?" she demanded. 17 out of 500, Admiral," came the grim reply. "And those are losing power rapidly." For the first time in her long military career, Admiral Varaneth realized she was completely defeated. Not by superior weapons or overwhelming numbers, but by an enemy that had found a way to make her own technology destroy itself. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the U.S. Defiant as the massive alien fleet destroyed itself. The electromagnetic pulse had worked even better than Dr. Patterson had predicted. The Zeltharian ships were not just disabled, they were actively self-destructing as their own systems malfunctioned. "Admiral Chong, the alien fleet is finished," Jake reported. "But we're detecting survivors in the wreckage." Admiral Lisa Chong studied the tactical display from her flagship. Hundreds of alien ships floated dead in space, their crews trapped inside vessels that had become metal coffins. It would have been easy to leave them to die, but that was not the human way. "All ships, begin rescue operations," Lisa ordered. "Save as many survivors as possible." "Admiral?" asked Captain Roy Martinez, his voice filled with confusion. "These aliens came here to destroy our entire planet. Why are we helping them?" "Because that's who we are," Lisa replied firmly. "We don't leave people to die in space, even if they're our enemies." Throughout the human fleet, ships moved carefully through the wreckage of the Zeltharian Armada. They cut through damaged hulls, provided emergency life support, and rescued thousands of alien survivors who had expected to be left to die. "Admiral." Varaneth found herself aboard the U's Harmony, standing in the ship's medical bay while human. Doctors treated her injured crew members. She watched in amazement as the same species that had just destroyed her fleet now worked desperately to save alien lives. "Why?" she asked Admiral Chong, who had come to check on the survivors. "We came here to destroy your world. We would have killed every human in your solar system. Why do you save us?" Lisa considered the question carefully. "Because showing mercy to defeated enemies is what separates civilization from barbarism. And because we hope that someday your people might understand that there's a better way than conquest." Back on Zentari Prime, Emperor Zarthik the Eternal sat in his throne room, staring at the communication screen that showed the wreckage of his greatest fleet. The World Render, the ship that had destroyed rebellious worlds and enforced Imperial rule for 1,000 years, was gone. And with it, any illusion that the Empire was truly invincible. "Your Imperial Majesty," said Prime Minister Yorthik, approaching the throne with obvious fear. "We have received a communication from the human fleet. They wish to negotiate." The Emperor's first instinct was to refuse. The Zeltharian Empire did not negotiate with lesser species. But as he looked at the images of his destroyed fleet, he realized that perhaps humans were not a lesser species after all. "Put them through," he commanded. Admiral Chong appeared on the massive screen that dominated one wall of the throne room. Behind her, the Emperor could see the blue and green curve of the human homeworld, the planet he had intended to destroy. "I am Admiral Lisa Chong of the Terran Defense Force," she said formally. "I'm speaking on behalf of humanity and the United Earth government." Emperor Zarthik studied the human leader carefully. She showed no signs of fear or submission, despite facing the ruler of 10,000 worlds. Instead, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had just won an impossible victory. "You have defeated our greatest fleet," the Emperor admitted. "What are your terms for our surrender?" Lisa shook her head. We're not looking for your surrender, your Imperial Majesty. We're looking for peace. Peace? The Emperor was confused. You have the power to destroy us, yet you offer peace instead of conquest? Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy, Lisa explained. We just want to be left alone to explore, to learn, and to grow. But we've proven that we'll defend ourselves if threatened. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. And what of the Empire? What of our territory, our subjects, our way of life? That's up to you, Lisa replied. But you might want to consider whether ruling through fear and conquest is really the best way to govern 10,000 worlds. Your own people might have some opinions about that. Over the following days, reports began reaching the imperial capital from across the galaxy. Species that had been conquered and oppressed by the Empire for centuries were rising up in rebellion. The news that humans had defeated the World Render spread like wildfire, inspiring resistance movements on worlds the Emperor had thought were completely pacified. The Vorthan Confederacy declared independence from imperial rule. The Crystalline Collective stopped paying tribute to the Empire. Even the normally peaceful Eldari began questioning why they should submit to Zaltharian authority. Your Imperial Majesty, reported Intelligence Minister Drexener, we're receiving reports of uprisings on over 300 worlds. They're demanding the same treatment that the humans negotiated for themselves. Emperor Zarthik realized that his empire was crumbling, not because of military defeat, but because his subjects had seen that resistance was possible. The humans had proven that the empire could be challenged, and now everyone wanted to follow their example. 6 months later, Ambassador Helen Garcia stood in the same throne room where the Emperor had once planned humanity's destruction. But now she was there as Earth's first diplomatic representative to what remained of the Zeltharian Empire. The Empire had changed dramatically. Instead of ruling through fear and conquest, Emperor Zarthik had been forced to negotiate with his subjects. Many worlds had gained independence, while others had negotiated for greater autonomy within a reformed imperial structure. The Galactic Council meeting is scheduled for next month, Helen reported to the Emperor. Representatives from 43 different species will be attending. The Emperor nodded wearily. The idea of a galactic council where different species worked together as equals would have been unthinkable just a year ago. But the human victory had changed everything. And what role will humanity play in this new galaxy? He asked. Helen smiled. The same role we've always wanted to play. We'll explore new worlds, make new discoveries, and help other species solve their problems. But now we'll do it as equals, not as subjects of an empire. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the new flagship UES Harmony, looking out at a galaxy that was very different from the one he had known a year ago. The ship was heading toward the Andromeda Galaxy, leading humanity's first intergalactic exploration mission. Captain Morrison, said his communications officer, we're receiving a message from the Zeltharian research vessel Peaceful Journey. They're asking if they can join our expedition. Jake smiled. A year ago, the Zeltharians had been trying to conquer humanity. Now they wanted to explore the universe together. Tell them they're welcome, Jake replied. The galaxy is big enough for everyone. Behind him, the Sol system grew smaller as the human fleet jumped into hyperspace. Earth was safe, humanity was free, and the future was full of infinite possibilities. War had started when the Galactic Empire tried to force humanity to submit. It had ended when the Empire learned that some species couldn't be conquered, only befriended. And sometimes the best way to build an empire was to give it up and work together instead. Dr. Carl Patterson, now serving as humanity's chief scientific advisor, had studied the entire conflict from beginning to end. His final report to the Terran government was simple. Humanity survived not because we had better weapons or superior technology, but because we never forgot that our greatest strength is our ability to adapt, to show mercy, and to find solutions that others couldn't imagine. The Zelfarian Empire had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years through fear and force. But humanity had shown them something better, a galaxy where different species could work together, explore together, and build a future together. The age of galactic empire was over. The age of galactic cooperation had begun. And it had all started when a single human exploration ship refused to surrender to forces that should have been impossible to defeat. Sometimes, the most important victories are won not by destroying your enemies, but by showing them a better way to live. And sometimes, the species that seems weakest turns out to be the strongest of all. The galaxy had learned to fear human warships, but more importantly, it had learned to respect human hearts.